It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Lawson Younger. We first met about 18 years ago at a seminar we attended together at Yale University, and we've stayed somewhat in contact since then. A little bit about his background. He has a bachelor's degree, cum laude, from Florida Bible College. I'm going to ask him about that one afterwards. And a master's degree in theology with honors from Dallas Theological Seminary, and finally a PhD from Sheffield University in England. He currently teaches at the Trinity Evangelical Divinity School of Trinity International University in Deerfield, Illinois. And we've had several speakers come from that university here in the past, colleagues of his, and they've all been very interesting and very informative, and this will not be any different. He's married to his wife, Patty. I hope he's married to his wife, and they've been married for 29 years and have 3 children, Kenny, 25, Andrew, 23, and Rebecca, 20. Any of them single?
They're all single.
They're all single. Well, you know, if we could convert them to BLDS, some of these people might be interested. He's published widely. I'm not going to, all of this stuff is his publications. It just makes people like me sick to see how much he's done in his life. I'll name a few of them. A forthcoming book, Who Are the Arameans, if you've ever wondered. I'm sure we'll be waiting with bated breath for that book to come out. In 2002, he has a whole volume on the book of Judges and Ruth. All you've always wanted to know about those 2 volumes. And, of course, really dear to my heart is something that came out last year, Ugarit at 75, Its Environs and the Bible. If you don't know what that is, please talk to me. I would be happy to tell you all about Ugarit and its environs. Or you can read his book, which would be even better. I'm going to leave it at that. Tomorrow I'll give a slightly different introduction to him at the second lecture here and show you some of his publications. Professor Younger.
Are we on? Okay. So, finding some of the lost tribes, Israelite deportees in Assyria. Let me say right from the outset that this is the product of a lot of research that I have done on the primary records from Assyria. In other words, cuneiform, clay tablets, and the information that those documents give to us. We have an amazing amount of information nowadays found really in the last 20 years roughly that really gives us a lot of insight into the whole process in which the Assyrians were deporting peoples, including the Israelites. We also have a lot of information that tells us what it was like for those peoples in captivity. So I'm going to concentrate on that. I am not going to get into issues of other Israelites, like the Israelites who remain in the land, who are not deported. The Bible tells us very clearly that there were some that were left there, and that the other peoples were deported into the area around Samaria and the Ephraimite hill country. There was intermarriage, and this is the origin of the Samaritans. That's an interesting subject. Love to talk about it, but not in this lecture. Also, there were other Israelites that migrated south into Israel at the invitation of Hezekiah. Again, that's all interesting, but I cannot get into that in the short time that we have today. The lecture is going to be broken down into 2 parts. By the way, let me thank all of you, first of all, for coming, because I know it's a lunch hour, and to come hear a boring archaeology lecture is certainly not the thing that most people would choose to do for lunch. So thank you. I'm breaking this down into 2 parts, the deportations themselves and then the actual exile. There are 3 kings that deported the Israelites. Typically, people think, especially with just a cursory reading of the Bible or something, that there was just simply one deportation. But actually, there were a number of deportations, and I'm going to go through those with you now. Tiglath-Pileser III, here is what he looked like, and ruled the Assyrian Empire, which at the time that he came to the throne was the purple. He expanded it to this green area here. So you can see the empire really expanded, and there were major deportations of peoples from all over this area that was conquered and deported to the core of Assyria. And the reason for that is that Assyria did not have a large population of its own. It needed to bring in peoples from the periphery to build its economy and to release Assyrians for military service. The goal for this initial campaign in 734 was Gaza. I don't have a good slide of the actual city of Gaza. This is the port of Gaza, and I thought a Mediterranean view would be nice too. So here you can see some of the recent excavations that have taken place here at the port of Gaza, the inland city that was the main target because it was the center of the spice trade in those days, was Tiglath-Pileser's first goal. One of the Israelite cities that certainly fell in this initial campaign was the city of Dor. And here you can see it. It's a coastal city with two lagoons on either side that gave a little bit of natural harbor. You can see some of the excavations here in this slide. This next one shows it better in terms of the gate structures and other things. The gate structure in particular here has revealed a whole series of gates. The Israelite gate, which was destroyed, and then an Assyrian gate that replaced it. In that gate structure that replaced it was found this cylinder seal, which gives you this impression, which is unfortunately does not have any epigraphic material, any writing on it, but nonetheless clearly shows Assyrian origin. Tiglath-Pileser then continued his campaign with another campaign that took place in 733, 732, and the main target here was Damascus and Israel, okay, especially Gilead and Galilee. We have documents, and this is from his annals. I just quote it briefly here. The target here was Rezin, the king of Damascus. Rezin, of course, is mentioned in the Bible. And you can see that the people undergo a siege of the city of Damascus. Some of the chief ministers of the Arameans of Damascus were impaled, and he shuts up Rezin like a bird in a cage. Here is Damascus. I don't have a lot of real good slides of Damascus, but Damascus has not really been excavated, so there's really nothing to show you except the main mosque found there, which, by the way, may be built on top of the old Hadad temple in Damascus. This map helps show now what I have been briefly trying to go through. The initial campaign took them down the coastline, the Assyrians, in which they took over the coastal plain of Israel. This they turned into a province. They are now interested in Damascus and these two areas here, one which will become a province, the other one which will not. The campaign against Damascus naturally leads you into Gilead, geographically speaking, and so that's what we will see then transpire. In this case from the Bible, 1 Chronicles 5, we're told that the God of Israel stirred the spirit of Pul, the king of Assyria, even Tiglath-Pileser, the king of Assyria, who deported the Reubenites, the Gadites, the half-tribe of Manasseh. So the 2.5 Transjordanian tribes, peoples there, are going to be deported, and they're deported to Halak, Habor, Hara, and the river of Gozan, and where they are to this day, obviously to the day of the writing of this passage. This campaign is also documented in Tiglath-Pileser's own inscriptions, in which he says that he carried off to Assyria the land of Bit-Humeri, which is the way of the Assyrians describing Israel. They rarely use the word Israel. They tend to use the phrase Bit-Humeri because bit or beat is the word for house, and Omri was a very mighty king of the northern kingdom of Israel, and that's what you're looking at bit Omri, if we were to anglicize it. Okay? So in any case, they killed, or I killed, probably better, Pekah, their king, and installed Hoshea as king over them. This is, of course, documented in the Bible as well. Here we see a scene of deportation from the Gilead. This is the city of Ashtaroth. We know that because it says so right there. Okay? And here we have Israelites being sent into captivity. Here is a close-up. You can see their dress and garment and the Assyrian guard who is in charge of taking them away. Actually, the annal text here doesn't match this. Only the epigraph matches the scene here. There's a second prong of this attack in 733 that takes the Assyrians into Galilee and into the Jezreel Valley. 2 Kings mentions this and names an itinerary of cities that get conquered. Ajon, Abel Beit Maacah, Yanoach, and Kedesh and Hatzor. And all of these, interestingly, fall into this. A further statement in the annals. I won't read that. We need to move along here. So he is going to take a path coming straight down in this fashion. And so cities like Dan, for instance, show archaeological evidence of the Assyrian invasion. We see here Abel Beit Maacah, which also shows some evidence of it, though it needs to be excavated more fully. Kedesh in Galilee, being excavated right now by the University of Minnesota. And they have found some evidence, though they haven't gotten really to the full level yet. And then, of course, the very famous Hatzor, the large city in northern Israel that gets conquered as well. Other places that are part of this itinerary of Tiglath-Pileser that are not in the Bible but outside the Bible, we have in his annals 18 and 24, and I just mentioned a few of the cities here that I can show you a photograph of. Actually, there are a whole handful of others. And he also totals up the number that he deports from these towns, very interestingly. In fact, the total, unfortunately, it's a fragmentary text, but it seems to match the individual entries of numbers for the different villages and towns. So Dabara was located near Mount Tabor, and here you can see Yatba, and here you can see Miram in the Horns of Hittim area. So the Galilee, in fact, the last slide, you can see there's the Sea of Galilee, was devastated. In fact, archaeological surveys have shown, and if we take the actual number of sites that are occupied and we multiply out the population coefficient per dunam, per square area, as we take that, it becomes very evident that the Assyrians depopulate the Galilee. They are very purposefully doing this, and I have speculated in some publications as to why they are doing that. I won't go into that now. But the evidence seems very strong that they are purposely depopulating the Galilee, which then allows them to create a new province that they center at Megiddo. And we have at Megiddo evidence of that new occupation. The next king of the Assyrians that's going to do his deportation of Israelites is Shalmaneser V, as you can see the dates there. We see evidence of this, first of all, in the capture and destruction of Shechem. This is witnessed in an Assyrian seal found in the excavations there, and the capture and destruction of Samaria. The Babylonian Chronicle and 2 Kings 17 both document this. Here is Shechem, excavated by G. Ernest Wright some years ago now, as well as Bill Deaver a little later. In Deaver's excavations, he found this. This is clearly an Assyrian seal. It dates to the destruction of the Assyrian destruction. And so very interesting indeed here. The iconography is quite interesting, the astral deities and things, but we won't get into that. Here is Samaria, and Samaria is going to be also conquered by Shalmaneser V. We're told in the scripture that after a 3-year siege, he is able to conquer this very heavily fortified site. One artifact that also comes from this period that I think is interesting is a seal that was recently discovered that is the seal of a servant of Hoshea, the last king of the northern kingdom of Israel. Here you see it in mirror image. This would be impressed. And so Evid, servant of, and here you can see Hoshea if you read epigraphic Hebrew. Next you can see Sargon II, and this is the third and final king of the Assyrians that does deportations of the Israelites. And he talks about the fact that he besieges and conquers Samaria. Here it's spelled slightly differently, but that's because the Assyrians use a slightly different spelling here, but it's the same site. Everyone recognizes that. I took as booty 27,290 people. So this is a number of Israelites being deported, and they're being deported from Samaria and the surrounding Ephraimite hill country. So that's a fairly significant deportation, obviously. A couple of other things. He also gets some chariots from them. The Assyrians always were looking to add to their military. And the rest of them I taught their skills, set my eunuch over them as their governor, and imposed upon them the same tribute as the previous king. Another inscription is very interesting in that it goes on and talks about the king, a king of Samaria that had plotted against him in agreement with another king, and he fought them, defeated them through the power of his great gods, and he counted as spoil 27,280. There's an error in the text actually, so we know it matches the earlier number. Together with their chariots and gods. I put that in color to emphasize the fact that the Israelites that are deported are not faithful. That's why they are being deported. I mean, that's why God allowed it to happen, the judgment. So as a result, he also here says that he took 200 chariots and put them into his service, etc. Okay? So at the end of this period, we can see Israel, Tiglath-Pileser had taken the red areas and this blue area. This blue area became part of this province. And now with Shalmaneser V and Sargon II, we see the fall of the northern kingdom completely. Interestingly, unidirectional deportations from this area for sure, probably from this area, but we don't know that because we don't have any archaeological surveys yet. This area is a bidirectional because they're going to take Israelites out and put other peoples in, okay? And so if we were to map this out, the Bible lets us know that they are going to be deported to different places. The scriptures, as well as the archaeological evidence that I'm going to show you in a moment, show very clearly that they are deported to Gozan, or Guzana, as the Assyrians call it. They are going to go to Halak, or Halakhu, as the Assyrians would call it, and they will end up in the city of the Medes, around the city of Harhar, which is renamed Kar Sharukin after Sargon II. That's his name in Assyrian. So we can see then that there were these three different kings who did these deportations, and we can map these out accordingly. We can also see then in the second part what happens to them and how this works. I've titled this The Exile and Segmented Assimilation. For those of you familiar with anthropological terminology, I have deliberately chosen segmented assimilation for a reason, as you shall see. The types of deportees are basically two in this sense. Those who received what we might call a preferred or at least a reasonable treatment, which was certainly a relatively small number, and those who received a very hard and difficult one, which was certainly the mass of the deportees. Now, the filtering process comes into play. I notice a number of you trying to take notes. You might like to just listen. This is published, so I'm happy to let you know where you can get it so that you don't write your hand off. In any event, the filtering process is really very straightforward. First of all, they took individual deportees and they looked at their prior status and their skills and matched these up to their needs. Okay? If they matched needs, then they got preferred treatment. If they didn't, they didn't. The Assyrian reliefs manifest this filtering process. I'll show you some slides where the actual interrogation process is shown. We also see generally nuclear families are kept intact, but extended family ties were definitely severed. We know that a few small nuclear families can stay together, and the Assyrians allow that, but they do not allow, for some obvious political reasons, for any extended families, clans, tribes to stay together. Assyrian deportations were not death marches, as sometimes is pictured. The Assyrians were concerned that the deportees arrived at their destinations in relatively good health. In fact, this particular letter helps illustrate that. It's to a high official in the days of Tiglath-Pileser III. His name is Ashur-Shalamani, and writes the king stating that he has 6,000 captives. Now, this particular letter is documenting captivity, deportees from southern Mesopotamia, from Babylonia, but nonetheless, it illustrates my point. They will not survive because he doesn't have enough grain to feed them. And so he makes the suggestion that half of them get transferred to somebody else. But this next letter is particularly stunning because the king commands a particular official, Ashur-Ramani, and a scribe by the name of Nabu Baal Akishu to be responsible with the captives that they are transporting. They are even to oversee the care of the sick deportees. Here is the actual quote: 7 times over you shall not be careless, for that you would die. So the king is threatening his official with death if he doesn't deliver these deportees in good health. If there's anyone sick among the captives whom they bring to you, you shall gather them together from among the group, however many there are. They shall transport them and place them in your presence until they are fit. So that clearly illustrates my point. Here we can see one slide. It's not the best, so we'll move on to the next one. But you can see here deportees being interrogated, and they are going to be shipped out based on this by this interrogation. And again, here. Now, the Assyrians did this interrogation not only to filter and to figure out who matched up with who they needed to do what, but they also did it for intelligence reasons, military intelligence reasons. Military intelligence, I know that that's sometimes considered an oxymoron, but in truth, military intelligence started many millennia ago, and the Assyrians were especially adept at it. And they got all kinds of bits and pieces of information before they ever deported people to the various places. But you can also notice something here. A family is being deported in this instance. All of the people who were deported would have gone through an incredible experience. The Assyrians, of course, not only conquered, but they purposely did all kinds of atrocities. Some of you know about this, some of you may not. They practiced what one Assyriologist has called an ideology of terror. It was psychological warfare that was designed to force people to capitulate without a fight, or if they fought, they really would lose, and hence it would discourage rebellion. They didn't want to reconquer the same turf again and again. I know that you're never taught this in your economics classes, and you shouldn't be, but one way of growing an economy is pillaging and plundering your neighbors. And that's what the Assyrians chose to do, okay? And so as a result, they grew their economy by pillage and plunder and bringing all this wealth from the periphery in, which meant you had to continue to pillage and plunder. You had to continue to conquer in order for there to be actual growth, economic growth. It's a strange thing. And so the Assyrians chose very deliberately to torture people. And you can see here some beheadings, some impalings that the Assyrians would typically do. This is only a small little sampling. Being lunchtime, I won't go into any further details, except to show just some of the psychological torture that would also be done. These are two kings that were captured, and they're grinding up the bones of their ancestors, which was obviously quite a severe thing in their thinking. Here is a picture of a rape of a woman taking place. So my point, very simply, is that as these people are being deported, they are in a psychological state of post-traumatic stress disorder, okay? Very largely so, okay? And so this, of course, is very important for us to keep in mind because when they arrive, they will still have all of this hanging on top of them. A family being deported at a rest stop. Okay, the Israelites were deported to three locations. The scripture tells us that they were deported to Halak, which is unquestionably the Assyrian province of Halakah. They were also deported to Gozan, which is Guzana in the Assyrian records, and to the cities of the Medes, which would be Harhar and the other towns immediately surrounding it. We also know of other peoples, in particular Medes, were being conquered. They were being deported to other places too, including in the region of Samaria. You've seen this map before, it just reiterates the three locations of the deportations. This document I show simply to show you that we know that Medes were also deported, because you're looking at a whole list of names, personal names of people who are receiving a ration text. This was discovered at Tel Yemma, a Assyrian outpost in Philistia. So much of the evidence for Israelites in Assyria comes from the attestations of individuals bearing Hebrew personal names. In the documentation, at least 70 individuals. I cannot stress how significant that number is. I don't mean because it's a multiple of 7. I mean it's significant because when you stop and think about how far back in time we're talking and the documentation that we have, to be able to isolate out 70 individuals that have Hebrew personal names is significant. Some of these could have been Judahites that were deported by Sennacherib later, but most of them are undoubtedly Israelites, especially in a few cases where they're called so-and-so the Sumerian. Well, that's got to be that. So just to show you kind of what I'm talking about, here's a clay tablet contract here, real estate contract. And in this line here, we get the beginning of a series of witnesses, and just to show you how it works, this introduces the witness, okay? This lets us know a man's name is coming, and his name is Bana Ia'u. The Ia'u is none other than Yahoo in the Sumerian script, which is the name of Yahweh, the God of Israel, in short form here. So this is in fact a Israelite name, Bana Yahoo, Yahweh creates. So deportees who receive preferred or at least relatively good treatment, reasonable treatment, included the following kinds of groups. Military personnel. We see that Tiglath-Pileser III, for instance, included an entire auxiliary unit from the Israelites into his forces. Sargon II included a charioteer contingent along with all the other chariots that he got, but the actual Israelites serving in those chariot forces. We know of individuals that had different titles, like this fellow, Nabbi Yahoo is a chariot driver. We have a cohort commander, a bodyguard in Nineveh, and an archer, all with the, as you can see, the Yahvistic theophoric name there. This particular document, called a horse list, documents a number of charioteers. And you can see this vertical wedge starting each one of those, okay, except here at the end where we're getting a total. And what is interesting here is that this is, a number of these have Israelite personal names, and then right here we get the total, 13, and they're all Sumerians. So we know that all of these individuals were, in fact, Israelites that were now in Sargon II's chariot corpse. That doesn't show very well, so we'll move on. That's just a chariot. Officials also were another place where we find some Israelites. An individual by the name of Shammah was a commander of teams. The Rab Shaka, who gives the speech to the besieged city of Jerusalem, or at least to the people at Jerusalem, is perhaps an Israelite. He knows Hebrew. Then we have a palace personnel list that tells us about some deportees, some others as well here. The one that is very questionable is Stephanie Dalley has tried to argue that two of the queens that were found in the new tombs discovered, I say new tombs, actually they were discovered in 1989, 1990 in Iraq, but not very well known, but incredibly interesting that the two queens there have Israelite personal names. I have argued that they do not. That last slide just simply showed you a horse trainer. This is Nimrud Kalku, the capital city of Assyria at this time, okay? At the time of Tiglath-Pileser III, Shalmaneser V, and then this is the new capital that's going to be built. This is Nineveh here, okay? Here's an aerial view, Tigris River. Here is the site. Here is a close-up of the site. Actually, the site goes off way in this direction. It's a very large site. This is really just the Citadel Palace complex. And here is the ziggurat. Here is one of the palace complexes. And in this area right about there, they found queens' tombs. This is what the palace may have looked like. Quite impressive, to say the least. Here is one of the artifacts found in the queen's tombs, a crown. Okay? And the artwork is incredible. The amount of gold is incredible. And the blue stone is lapis lazuli. Here is a diadem that may look like string, but that is twined gold. Okay? It's quite something. And then these are two bowls that are inscribed, one of them inscribed with the name of an individual named Atalia, which Dalley argues is an Israelite. I argue that the Yahvistic Theophoric is never written that way in cuneiform, therefore I have doubts about it. In any case, we have an additional group, that's priest. Priest, we have Sumerian lamentation priest. We also know of the priest from Samaria that goes back and teaches the deportees in Samaria, okay, which, of course, is a perverted understanding of the law. And these individuals are serving in the Assyrian cult, so they're not following the Lord. And priestly singers. Here you can see a few instrumentalists. Skilled laborers, they also needed skilled laborers, especially in places like Halak, where they are building this new city and new palace of Sargon II. These individuals would have received a very reasonable ration. In fact, we have texts that lay out that ration for them. I'll say something more about that in a little bit. This is Dur Sharukin, okay? The modern city of Mosul is right here. And this is Nineveh here. Here is an artist's conception. University of Chicago dug Khorsabad, which is Dur Sharukin, and this is an artist's interpretation of the evidence that was found there. You can see some of that evidence. I take some of my students every other semester down to the Oriental Institute to see some of this because it's quite impressive. This is the ziggurat, reconstructed ziggurat. And here is reconstructed gate of the city. You can imagine this is taller than our ceiling, so it's really big. All right, merchants were another group that also received preferred treatment. We have some evidence of these individuals, and landowners, we have some evidence of them as well. However, the area where many of the exiles are going to end up goes on right here. And so we're going to talk a little bit now about that. And the area just to the south of it, this is Dur Katlimu here, modern Sheikh Hamad. Okay. Finally, we also see that there were witnesses in some of the documents. Israelites served as witnesses in over 20 legal documents from Assyria. It is clear from these, as well as other documents, that later generations of deportees adopted non-Israelite, specifically Assyrian names. Thus, there was a certain Assyrianization at work along generational lines. The evidence indicates intermarriage and assimilation of the Israelite tribes in these areas. Okay? That also has to be considered because the Assyrians were very deliberate in their Assyrianization, assimilation process. As I said, it was a assimilated or segmented assimilation. Those that received a bad treatment, well, here we go. Agricultural workers were organized into military cohorts for the very simple reason that they could enforce Assyrianization on them. Okay? We know of them at Gozan, and we know that individuals that lived under these conditions received the very bare minimum dosage ration. That is 1 ku or 1 ka, okay, roughly 1 liter of barley per day. That's it. That will give you enough energy to be productive, okay, but you won't put it on any weight. All right, and it also means that you will have a shortage of vitamin A and vitamin C, both of which are very significant because over a period of time, deficiency in vitamin A will cause blindness, and vitamin C, of course, lack of that, scurvy. Deportees often, especially leaders, were deported in chains and fetters. Here are some of the deportees in the manual labor that would take place in the villages. Again, goes on, and also down in Lache, in this area here, we see further Israelite evidence. This goes on. And the forced, they would also be included in forced labors. These would be especially in the context of building Dur Shurukin. The bulk of the unskilled laborers was certainly deportees, and these would receive 1 ka. We have one letter, actually, that documents Israelites doing slave labor in the building of Dur Shurukin. Here you can see some of the kinds of manual labor that is pictured in the Assyrian reliefs. Frontline points was also where deportees could end up, and the cities of the Medes would certainly be that. They would be sent out into Media, and this would have been an area around the city of Harhar. This would have taken place after 716, because before 716, there were no cities of the Medes for the Israelites to be deported to, that the Assyrians really had possession of. Here you can see roughly where it is. It's in the central western part of Iran today, would be where this is located. This is northern Iraq in the Kurdistan area. This is in the eastern part of Syria today. But those are all modern boundaries that really don't apply very much here. This is a picture of the conquest of Harhar. Here is a scene of Media. We also see that the Israelites were compelled to be forced into actual slave labor. Here are a couple of them documented. We also have an Israelite woman documented in the text whose name is Dinah, of course, a famous biblical character as well, and she was a slave in Gozan. Also, we see debtors that fall into slavery as the result, and Irab Aribah, the son of Atzal Yahu, was one of these. And we have that actually documented right here. And we have the father's name here, okay? We have then, starting here, and then we have the cuneiform sign that here comes his son, and here comes another male name, and this is the name of his son. Again, the Yavistic theophoric ending on it, so that we know, in fact, it is an Israelite. And so as a result, then, we can tie things up in the following manner. I don't know whether it's working or whether there is another slide. I'm sorry? Oh, I have. No, there should be one. Oh, you know what? All right. There is one, but I didn't change the setup. Okay. Conclusions from memory. All right. Number one, the Israelites were not lost. They knew where they were. The Assyrians knew where they were. And we know where they were because of the documentation that we have today. So it's a little bit of a misnomer to call them lost, because they really were never actually lost. Secondly, it's important for us to notice that in the segmented assimilation and the forced Assyrianization process, there would not have been any tribalness preserved. That process would break down tribalness and clans and would only allow small nuclear families to survive. So again, our misnomer perhaps, we need to get a little more precision and accuracy in the way we describe these things. Thirdly, we can see that this was very much a generational assimilation, because we see over the generations a tendency to leave their Israelite personal names behind and a move to Assyrian personal names. And finally, the Assyrian culture was such that it demanded an assimilation within it. It was a melting pot kind of culture, but it was a forced melting pot kind of culture. In other words, it took all these different deportees from the different Aramean states, the Philistine states, Babylonia, Medes, Luvians, et cetera, and intermixed them and forced them to adapt the Assyrianized culture. Thank you.